their employment rights, but also raising awareness of what to do if they see signs of serious exploitation within the workplace. Okay, so the GLAA, we are a law enforcement and compliance agency. We're what's termed an arm's length body. So we are accountable to ministers through the Home Office, and it's the Home Office that funds us, but we do have an independent board who set the direction and strategy for the organisation. We also report to the Office of the Director of Labour Market Enforcement in terms of our strategy and our performance. And we present our annual report and accounts to Parliament each year. If you do want to see the work that we've done and how much money we've spent, then all of those reports are on our website. So moving on to the next slide. Okay, so we're situated in Nottingham, is our head office, so not too far away from the centre of, obviously, from England, but we do operate across all of the UK. And I'll explain more a bit later on about our role within the UK, because it isn't uniform, although we'd very much like it to be. And although we've got this UK remit, we are a really small organisation. In total, we number 125 employees. Normally, half of those employees are home-based across the UK, and they, in the main, are operational teams. So they are working in syndicates, comprising the regional intelligence officers, investigating officers, and their managers, as I say, right across the UK. But currently, we are all home-based due to COVID and the coronavirus. But I am pleased to say that throughout this time, we have remained operational. And in fact, we are the only organisation with a labour inspectorate role that has managed to do that. So we're very pleased and proud of the operational teams who have carried on with their investigations and going out to workplaces and checking that workers are safe. So Jen, on to the next slide. So our CEO, Mark Rich, has got a very clear purpose about what we do, and that is protecting workers from labour exploitation. And on the next slide, we'll go into a bit more detail as to how we do that. So labour exploitation can take many forms. It operates right across the spectrum, and it can start with people just being denied their basic employment rights that are enshrined in UK law. So, for example, not having the correct protective clothing. It could be about not being paid the national minimum wage, not having a workplace pension scheme. These are all rights that we all should have, but for many they are denied, and that can be due to them being exploited in the workplace. It can, however, become a much more serious form of exploitation. Elements of criminal offences of forced labour or human trafficking, which themselves constitute modern slavery. And again, as we go through the slides, I'll talk a bit more about our role in prevention and tackling these both labour exploitation at the lower level, but also the more serious cases of modern slavery. Oh, so yeah, Scott, if you could move us on. And again, please. So a cornerstone of the GLAA's work is our licensing scheme, and this regulates businesses who provide workers to the fresh produce supply chain. So amongst others, we're talking about workers who are going onto farms, agricultural sites, or working in food processing and associated packaging factories. And really the licensing scheme is to make sure that those basic employment standards that I mentioned are being met, and that workers are getting the rights and the fair conditions of work that they are entitled to. To obtain a licence, an applicant must be able to demonstrate evidence that they meet all of our licensing standards. And those licensing standards, there's a booklet there that we give out. They detail every aspect of an employer's responsibility for those workers. And that could include obviously their employment rights, but also if they use transport, for example, to take workers to and from the place of work, if they provide accommodation for those workers, as well as the administration schemes that they have in operation for payment of workers. And it's quite detailed as to what those standards are required, and we will look for evidence that an applicant has all of the knowledge in place, all of the processes, and can demonstrate that they are a fit and proper person to hold a licence. Only when that is met do we grant that licence. At the moment, we have about in the region of 1,000 licence applications, licence holders right across the UK. We also have some overseas licence holders, because if they're supplying workers in the UK into this sector, then they're also required to demonstrate that they meet those standards and that they have the required evidence to show that. So once they're granted a licence, we will continue to monitor to make sure that those standards are being upheld. We are an intelligence-led organisation, so we rely on the intelligence that comes from a whole range of sectors. Sometimes it can come from our law enforcement partners, other government departments, as well as members of the public, and of course the businesses themselves who are either benefiting from the workers who are being supplied, or themselves the businesses that are supplying those workers. And if we do come across any non-compliance, then we will not hesitate to revoke those licences and prosecute businesses for unlicensed trading. The action we take is always proportionate. We always consider the impact the action would have on workers, but we do evidence the decisions that we take, and there is an appeal process which any licence holder, if they feel that we've acted unlawfully or without consideration, then they can go through that appeals process via a tribunal. And again, we do publish all those tribunal results, and they're a matter for public record. So on the next slide, please, Scott. So as I mentioned at the previous slide, the benefits of the licensing scheme is that workers do receive the fair treatment, they pay the benefits and conditions that they're entitled to. Prior to this licensing scheme, it was widely recognised that there was a huge problem within the agricultural sector about the treatment of workers. I think the licensing scheme, and I think most within and the licence holders themselves will testify that it has brought about a much fairer system for the way workers are treated. And also the point that we are a friend of businesses. We don't want to see labour providers undercut by companies who will charge below market rates purely on the basis that they can exploit workers. The fact that there is there's a desire to create a level playing field so that businesses can operate fairly and can compete with each other without that threat of companies coming in and taking business. Does still happen, not saying it doesn't, but I think the opportunities are greatly reduced, and again, where we get evidence that is happening, that we will take action, we will prosecute. I think there's a biggie message for consumers, that they can be assured that their food has been picked and packed in an ethical environment. We're not at this stage yet, but I think we want to be at this stage where that level of consciousness amongst consumers is at the same level it is now with animal welfare. I think people are quite rightly concerned about animal welfare. For example, that they will look to buy their eggs and want to be sure that those eggs have been or come from a source where animal welfare was at the highest level. We just want consumers to also think about the people who are looking after the chickens as well, and the fact that they've been treated at the highest level of welfare. And I think that's a long-term gain and a long-term aim of ours, is to inject more of that thinking into the consumer. Thank you, Scott. Next slide. So these are our powers, and as you can see, acting as an unlicensed gangmaster can carry up to 10 years imprisonment. And you'll see on our press releases that we do prosecute, and we do send to prison those who have committed that offence at the and sometimes at the worst level of exploitation. But also using the services of an unlicensed gangmaster can carry a sentence of up to 6 months. We do have a checklist, an active checklist, that anybody who's thinking of using workers for the agricultural sector, they can go on our website and just check which businesses are actually licensed. We are aware that there are businesses that will try and deceive companies by suggesting that they've got a license and looking to secure business through that way. Again, that can carry a prison sentence if found guilty, if we prosecute. But we do always encourage businesses, if they're in this sector, then they have got a responsibility to make sure that the services they're using are from a licensed gangmaster and not one that's either never had a license or whose license has expired. Next slide, please, Scott. So the licensing scheme is a big cornerstone of the GLAA's work, and in fact it was the mainstay of its work up until 2017, when we acquired new powers of investigation. We had a new remit. Our remit was also to look now at cases of serious modern slavery right across the economy. Our new powers are only restricted at the moment to England and Wales, although we would welcome the uniformity that would allow us to have the same powers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and those discussions are ongoing. We are small as an organisation, so therefore that desire, that need to work in partnership is very much part of our DNA. We do independently run and open cases and carry out investigations, but more often than not, the emphasis is on partnership working with police forces up and down the country, so other law enforcement agencies, the National Crime Agency, as well as other government departments and the local authority. Often with cases of labour exploitation will come multiple other cases of crime and criminal behaviour, so that partnership working really is essential. Next slide, please, Scott. So, spotting the signs. I'm conscious of the time, so I can't go into this into too much detail, but this leaflet that we've got on our website is a really good introduction if you are new to this area of work. It's also good as something to refresh and renew your knowledge. The labour exploitation, spotting the signs. If you can just move to the next slide, please, Scott. It details the different types of exploitation, provides definitions of human trafficking, forced labour, debt bondage, all of which would come under our radar. Again, if they come into our intelligence section. It also includes then details about spotting the signs and really some very good information about assisting victims and some do's and don'ts. So for this webinar, what I've done is just put forward 5 very simple things you could do if you wanted to support the GLAA These are very, very simple things, but could also be very effective in helping us undertake our work. So if you could just go to the next slide, and the next one. So the most important thing you can do is, if you experience exploitation or you witness it, is to report it. We have got an intelligence section, we have intelligence officers, we have a dedicated phone line that you can speak to those officers to give the information that you've got. We have got a translation service available. Some of our employees also speak multiple languages. We would always say, obviously, if it's an emergency, that in the first instance, it's call the police. But there's also other numbers, and I'm aware it is a very crowded market in terms of reporting, and it's something that I think everybody involved in this area are aware. But because our remit is solely labour exploitation, modern slavery can obviously comprise other forms of slavery, which we don't have a remit for. So we we can only focus on the areas that we've got the responsibility, but we will make referrals, obviously, where that's required. But yeah, if it's cases of labour exploitation, and I suppose really it's about having then the right information that you can give us. You know, the difference between information and intelligence is that intelligence is really information that's of value. So when if you did report, it really is as much information as you can in terms of what you've observed. You know, it could be about the date, the times, the other things that you've captured, however small the detail. But it's trying to be as detailed as you can, that can help us hopefully paint a picture of what may be emerging in a particular workplace or in a community, because obviously the workplace is where the exploitation occurs, but it can also occur in the homes that people live in, particularly if they're under that level of control and are being trafficked from workplace to workplace, which often means being moved from house to house as well. So next slide, please, Scott. Our website, we've got lots of booklets, leaflets, posters and videos about labour exploitation and modern slavery. These are all freely available. We've done a lot of work with the GLAA initiative. The GLAA initiative are linked to the Church of England, and they've worked really hard at producing a range of modern slavery courses, safeguarding courses, in which we've helped contribute to the content. Very much about building community resilience, because again, the stronger communities are to spotting the signs of modern slavery and labour exploitation, the more that they are able to know what to do when they see it, the greater the chance that we will be able to, at the very least, disrupt that the offences taking place, and also bring the exploiters to justice. Now, the GLAA initiative also been developing what's called the Farm Work Welfare app, and it's got there. The slide is, unfortunately, the launch was due to be tomorrow. It's been put back by a week, but this is an app that is of, well, it's got a benefit to the employers. It's got a range of information, advice and guidance about farm work, about employment rights, that is of benefit to the employers, but also to the farm workers. It's also got a reporting mechanism that anybody that, as I say, has witnessed exploitation or has been subject to exploitation, they can contact through the app the Modern Slavery Helpline, who in turn will process that that call and make the appropriate referral to the agencies who were tasked with dealing with it, obviously including ourselves. So next slide, please, Scott. One of the things that's proved highly popular amongst workers, particularly in the agriculture and food sector, is this worker rights leaflet. It actually comes down to literally a pocket size, which opens up, and it's got basic information on those bullet points that you can see there. We have got it available on our website. It's available in 19 different languages. The majority of those languages, based on the evidence of need that we've gathered from our intelligence. It's particularly good for those agricultural workers, because when we've met workers out in the field, they can very quickly slip it into their pocket, particularly if they don't want to see anybody seeing that they've got that information, because we are aware sometimes we've got to be sensitive as to how we approach workers, for fear that they might be identified as talking to the authorities, as often the case. So these leaflets are really handy. And for the current Operation Aiden, which is a multi partnership approach that's currently running, we've added a simplified version of this leaflet, which again you can get from our website. Next slide, Scott. You can stay in touch with the work of the GLAA by signing up to our partnership bulletin. That goes out every 2 to 3 months. It really is trying to be a partnership bulletin, so we want to encourage those that we work with to give us features, stories that we can put in the bulletin that demonstrate the work they're doing that supports the GLAA. All you need to do is just email communications@gla.gov.uk, just request that you want to go on a mailing list, and then you'll automatically receive it in your inbox when the next edition is due. And next slide, please, Scott. And finally, we do a lot of work on social media. Again, we find it's a very good interactive tool to reach some of our key stakeholders. Obviously, also reaching what we feel is vulnerable workers, even vulnerable workers who may not have started their journey to come to the UK. We've done campaigns via Facebook, in which we, through Facebook, we advertised opportunities, or we just made a suggestion as to whether they were looking for work. And when they clicked on the link, they came to a Crime Stoppers page, which gave advice about the employment rights and where to go for more information and guidance. And that was targeted at the Romanian community, and it was particularly targeting the Romanian community who were coming to work in the construction industry. And our initial analysis is that reached over a million people. It was produced in both languages, and it was launched in both Romania and in the UK at the same time. And it's campaigns like that and more campaigns that we're looking at to go more upstream in many cases, because again, the role of prevention is trying to identify the right time to provide the right advice to the right people, in order to make sure that they've got the knowledge, that they've got the understanding of what to expect before they come to the UK to work. We're also aware that there's the majority of cases of labour exploitation are actually UK residents who experience that. So we do a lot of work with the community and voluntary groups. We do identify hotspot areas where we feel we can have some impact by trying to work with those local community and voluntary groups who have got a much more detailed knowledge and understanding of their own communities, and through them we can hopefully reach those vulnerable people again, to give them the advice, guidance and support if necessary. Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, thank you for listening. This time I'm going to pass over to Kaylee, but before I do, I just wanted to check if there is any questions that you'd like me to answer specifically on my part of the presentation. If you do, if you want to raise your hand, virtual hand, and I'm sure Scott will pick it up.
There doesn't appear to be any questions at the moment, Frank, so I think we're probably good to move
okay.
on to Kaylee.
That's good. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over to Kaylee. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank. So moving on to talking about the GLAA and Boston College. We formed a partnership together to start working together on this project. Next slide, please. So the planned outcomes, as you can see some on the screen, but were also to create a supportive environment for staff to develop their confidence, to deliver knowledge to learners on this topic, and also to raise awareness with learners about their working rights. Next slide, please. So this is what we actually did, and we did quite a lot in this project, so bear with me. So the GLAA initially delivered dedicated staff training to over 200 of Boston College staff. That was the first thing we did. This was mainly to develop confidence in staff and to enable the staff to deliver a prepared tutorial session onto their learners at college. We then went on to prepare the tutorial programme, which was delivered by staff to over 1,500 learners, young people, within the college, including apprentices. So as well as learners that are 16 to 18 years old on average and on site most days at college, this also went out to apprentices that come into college once every few weeks and then are at work obviously every day. The staff contextualised the tutorial materials to the curriculum area. So there's lots of different areas at college, from creative arts and media to computing to an A-level provision. So they contextualised the materials and included examples that learners could relate to. It was all about making it relatable to a young person. So we also developed interactive quizzes as well to be used in these sessions to engage learners, because we are mostly dealing with 16 to 18-year-olds, so young people. So another thing we did as part of the project was to ensure that young people were aware of their rights and responsibilities when in a work environment. So a lot of young people study and work, and obviously FE is predominantly to prepare young people to go on to higher education or into the work environment. So we ran a joint cross-college rights and responsibilities week between Frank and myself to the learners. We engaged with local employers on the project and ran a range of different activities where different companies took part. An example would be ACAS. So ACAS ran some interactive sessions for learners to take part in, and we ran these on what makes a good employer, so young people know what to look out for, and what also makes a good employee, so young people also know it's not just about the employer, it's also about them as an employee as well. So ACAS ran those sessions, which were really successful, and they also ran some informal Q&A sessions as well. They just had a stand in the main part of the college, so it gave learners the confidence to ask questions, pay slips, working hours, also on asking somebody about informal advice on how to manage tricky situations in the workplace, which can often be very difficult for young people. So these sessions encouraged open and honest discussions between different groups of learners from different curriculum areas, often them sharing very private and personal information about their work environment, about their work contract, and if they had a contract. So this We then moved on, and on the same day, we also worked with the Salvation Army as well. And they ran some sessions on what is modern day slavery and what their response is to this. They shared information on the national referral mechanism and what support is offered to people affected by slavery. So learners reviewed a journey from a person being a victim to becoming a survivor, so they fully understood the terminology and what could happen. So learners also discussed human trafficking and identified who may be affected and the impacts of this. I'm going to ask Scott now to play a video because this project was picked up by local Look North. So they came to Boston College and they came to film part of the session. So hopefully, technology permitting, Scott's going to share this with you now. It's about two and a bit minutes just for you to have a look and get an understanding of what we did.
Special lessons to teach pupils how to spot the signs of modern-day slavery are being run for the first time in Boston. After a number of high-profile cases in the county, Boston College says it's important that young people are aware of how employers can take advantage of some workers and how to spot the signs of more serious exploitation. Victoria Holland reports.
They're the people who are often at risk of exploitation. Workers in industries like beauty, agriculture or construction. Last year in England, there were more than 1,000 cases of modern slavery and many more potential victims identified.
Next question. What is the maximum hours your employer can ask you to work in a week?
Now Boston College thinks it's so important that its pupils understand what exploitation means. They're partnering with the Gangmasters and Labour Abuse Authority.
Because we're so young, if we don't read what our employer's given to us, it's so easy that we can just take no notice, and they could ask us to work so many hours, which is past our contract, which then is obviously being exploited.
They don't pay the minimum wage or they don't treat you right at work. It is a really good thing because then it makes teenagers realize that that's what happens in the world, so you need to look out for this.
In September 2017, 11 members of the Rooney family were jailed for exploiting workers around Lincolnshire. They targeted the homeless and the vulnerable, forcing them to work for little or no money and live in squalid conditions. Jeremy Cullimore is the vicar of St Mary Le Wigford in Lincoln. He met many of the Rooney's victims and welcomes more education.
What Boston College is doing is so important. We need to be able to recognise the signs of modern slavery and know who to contact, because the people who are held, they are not always going to be the ones to shout out help. And it's up to us to recognise it and to offer that help and make it happen.
There has been high-profile cases in the Boston and Lincolnshire region that certainly has raised awareness amongst the students, but we also feel it's important to make sure they're aware that they themselves could become a victim of exploitation.
Although most of these students seem clued up, the college hopes these classes have a ripple effect, and students will pass this information on to their friends and families and stop them becoming victims of exploitation. Victoria Holland, BBC Look North, Boston.
Thank you, Scott. So we're just going to go back to the presentation and carry on discussing the next parts of the project that we started to work on after this. So as the project developed, we also moved on to offer 100 creative arts learners work experience. So they're studying full time, and as you know, if you're in education, work experience is a really important part of their study program. So where possible, we simulated a realistic working environment for these learners. This enabled learners to understand that the industry can offer a lot of self-employed work or work based on commission payments, and sometimes they could be pitching for work without even knowing the full terms and conditions of the contract. So we wanted it to be as realistic as possible. So the learners were given a live brief from the GLAA. The regular discussions and progress meetings were undertaken between the learners and the GLAA. off-site, not always at college, so again to simulate those realistic conditions. So from the project, the learners produced a real wide variety of materials for the GLAA to use. So this work is available on the website, and I will show you some later in this presentation. So this also led on to the learners being invited to the University of Nottingham Human Rights Lab, who heard about the project and contacted Frank. So the learners presented their work in a lecture theatre, which for some learners took a lot of confidence to undertake this as an average 16-year-old. It was quite a scary and exciting experience for them. So the learners showcased different types of work that they'd produced, and they really surprised us with some amazing work that they produced. So they produced videos to animated storybooks to pieces of clothing. So this was the take of an average to 16 to 18-year-old learner and their interpretation. So not only did the learners develop their presentation skills and confidence, but also benefited from visiting a university and experienced a university lecture. So all of this developed the learners' cultural capital, which will help them with their next steps. Yes. Next slide, please, Scott. Thank you. So as the project evolved to another local employer who has a high proportion of employees that have recently moved into the area. The learners developed theirs and interviewed these new employees to find out how they could help them to integrate within the local community and to dispel any stereotypes. From the learners' research, they made a video which is played to new employees of the company, providing essential information on the local area to help employees fit in, to integrate, and to make them feel welcome. So these relationships developed over a period of time throughout the academic year with the local companies, and they often would then return as guest speakers, hold informal question and answer sessions with us, often speaking to different groups within the college to develop the young people's knowledge. So we found that using interactive resources with the learners worked well and supported engagement with the project, and it held their interest. So learner confidence grew through these sessions and developed in classroom discussions, and often then, you know, they got very comfortable in speaking out, sharing their points of view and personal experiences. So learners' knowledge and understanding developed throughout the project. So on the next slide, Scott, if you could move on for me. This is just some of examples of the student work that was produced, but I'm now going to ask Scott to play you a show reel of the learners' work that we've put together. And this is what was also presented when the learners went to the University of Nottingham to showcase the work that they'd put together. Hopefully this will work for you so you'll be able to see it. Thank you. All of these videos and creative arts projects are all available individually on the GLAA website, and I'd encourage you to have a look. There's some really good stuff on there, and as you can see from the show reel, we're very proud of the work that's been produced by the learners at Boston College. Also, all the resources we used for all the tutorials for learners and all the interactive materials are also available on that website. So the project again developed, and it led on to an event being held at the Houses of Parliament. Could you go on to the next slide for me, please, Scott? Thank you. So here you can see Molly and Max, two creative arts learners. They delivered a personal presentation on their involvement in the project to a FE audience that was held at the Houses of Parliament. They discussed their learning on how the project developed their cultural capital. And one other thing to consider is neither of these two learners had ever been to London before or ever used the London Underground or been on a high-speed train. So for them, the day offered lots of new opportunities to both learners. So as well as gaining confidence delivering at the Houses of Parliament, it was such a very big and interesting day for them, something that was very nice to be shared with them. So I had a great experience, and I'm now going to pass you back to Frank, who's going to move on to the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kaylee. So I just want to finish off with some conclusions. We had this project evaluated by the Rights Lab at the University of Nottingham, and again, a copy of that is also available on our website. We did see this as a pilot, and it's really has enthused us to do more and want to do more and want to forge a much stronger relationship with the post-16 education sector. We really do feel that communities, well, colleges are at the heart of the communities wherever they are based. You know, they've got excellent relationships with key stakeholders. They've got really good, strong connections with local employers, which again is been so vital in this project. Because we utilised the contacts that the colleges had with local employers, and we'd want to do the same again. But we also feel that colleges can gain, and work-based training providers can gain so much from this as well. We know that that colleges, work-based training providers are under enormous amounts of pressure with their demands on work, but we feel introducing the subject of modern slavery and labour exploitation is essential. It is, after all, a safeguarding issue. One of the things we focused on with the staff at Boston College is the signs of somebody being exploited, and what to do, once you identify that somebody is. So we saw it as something that could support safeguarding procedures within those organisations. Obviously, it's got clear links with employability. We want young people or anybody that's coming through college who has been retrained to be confident when they enter the workplace. And part of that confidence is understanding and being able to articulate what their rights, their employment rights are. As we've seen a loss of, the demise of the trade union movement, particularly in certain sectors, there's very little in the way that people can find out about their employment rights on any kind of generic scale. So having a better, if you like, updated understanding of the labour market and all of the opportunities, but also some of the challenges that will face people entering that labour market, particularly in high-risk areas. As I said, at the start of this presentation, we are an intelligence-led organisation. We do know where the high-risk areas are, such as construction, such as nail bars, hand car washers, hair and beauty, around the areas of hospitality, agriculture. So the more that we can link in with colleges who are preparing students for work in those particular sectors makes it even more of an urgency as to making sure that they go out with that updated knowledge and awareness. And after all, we feel that they are the workforce of tomorrow. So, you know, those young people are ambitious. They could be tomorrow's managers, directors, business owners. So if we can start them on the right foot by understanding the, like I say, the landscape that they're entering, and, you know, knowing the damage that labour exploitation can do, not just socially, but also economically, then I think we can start to see that we can start turning off the tap in terms of future victims. This also links with citizenship, about knowing, young people knowing their rights, links to you know, to the British values, the right to work, the right to have your understand your employment rights, your legal rights as a human being. So there's a lot there for colleges and work-based providers to take away, and hopefully as we move this project along and we start to get more momentum at a national level, that you will give us your support, and we'd be more than happy to discuss with you any ideas, any ways in which you can support us after this presentation. So is there any questions? Anything?
Yes, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, hi. My understanding is that under Labour government, if somebody was reported in this situation and they did not have the right to the leave to remain in the UK, they were given indefinite leave to remain in the UK. I could be wrong there, but I think that was the case. What happens now if a victim, if I report them and they do not have leave to remain in the UK? The biggest hindrance there is that sometimes the victim does not want to leave, and they, because of their financial commitments to their family. So if I report somebody who's being abused, what would happen to them in terms of their leave to remain in the UK, please? Thank you.
Okay, well, we get asked this question a lot, and you know, we are victim focused. So our concern, our major concern, is removing that person from the place of danger or where they're being harmed. We cannot, get away from the fact that we are a law enforcement agency, and we have a responsibility, if any information comes to us, to pass it on to the relevant authorities, and that could be immigration. We don't have any say in the what follows after that, but we do have a duty, if we have got information, to pass that information on. But I do want to emphasise that is not what we go looking for when we investigate labour exploitation. Our remit is to protect victims and protect them from harm and suffering, and if possible to remove them from that place, and then obviously build a case against the exploiters.
Great, thanks Frank, and thank you Kaylee, that was a really good presentation. We do still have time for any more questions if anybody has got any. To Matthew, yes, we will be sharing Frank and Kaylee's contact details. At the end of this, we will send out the slide. We've also recorded the session, so you'll get a copy of the recording to share with your team, as well as a copy of the slides, and the reference to the links that Frank made. We'll make sure that we include that in the email to you all, so you can easily access those. If anybody does have any more questions, please do let us know. Either stick your hand up or feel free to pop yourself off mute and ask Frank or Kaylee directly. Okay, I think Anna, you've raised your hand. Feel free to take yourself off mute and come into the conversation.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So yeah, just wanted to ask regarding what I think Frank mentioned earlier about the project with specifically for Romanian citizens. Would you be able to send some information about that? As we do through our organization, we work with a lot of Romanian citizens, And we also work with another organization which recently was established specifically for Romanian nationals, specifically now with Brexit and during the coronavirus. And was just wondering if I can pass on this webinar to other organization, or is this specifically for our organization?
No, I mean, once it's been released, it'll be free to send it to whoever you wish. And if you send me your details, Anna, and I'll get the details about the Facebook campaign, because I think we are running that again currently.
Okay.
Because of its success last time. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. I'm also Romanian as well. So.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'll get that to you.
Okay. Do you have is the details in the email, or?
I think Scott will send out my details.
Okay.
Yeah. So drop us a line and I'll get that to you.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Great. Any more questions from anybody or comments that you would like to share with Frank or Kaylee? Thank you to those that I've already put in the comments. Well, it's great to see quite a few colleges coming forward and wanting to get involved in the project. We will make sure that that information is passed through to Kaylee and Frank, and ensure that you're get involved in the project. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us for this afternoon session. I hope that you found it beneficial. We were really delighted to see so many people come together from across various sectors to join us on today's session. We hope that it has proved beneficial. We will send you an email that will either come out later today or first thing tomorrow with all of the resources. But if you do have any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with myself, Kaylee, or Frank. But thank you for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.